Welcome to the Alcohol Addiction Podcast. My name is Davy. I'm not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I'm someone who doesn't drink alcohol. I spend every waking moment of my one life helping other people do the same. Like right now, it's a little bit shaky. I've actually been banished to the bedroom. My wife is downstairs cooking some food for Zia. We're in a bit of a rush because we're going to Malta for the week. So I'm upstairs lying on the bed. So as professional as always. As I said yesterday, this week is William Porter week. I've actually just come off air with William. So I had a nice interview with him for an hour. Lost internet connection. The last 5 minutes was a little bit disappointing, but hopefully it won't be too much of an issue for you. You got a good 55 minutes of gold, and we'll knit together the end bit of it. Really nice guy. Really enjoyed my conversation with him, and it was good to ask him some questions. And today I'm going to talk about the book Alcohol Explained, which is William's baby. I want to just talk about some of the things I've highlighted in there and maybe have some comments on it and that. So get your cup of tea in the hand like I have here and we'll get to it, yeah? Okay, so first and foremost, William Porter on alcoholism. Okay, so here's an excerpt from his book on alcoholism. And he says, "What I could never accept," this is William talking, "what I could never accept from the very beginning was that there is an irrational collective insanity that is alcoholism, and that it is impossible to provide some form of rationalization for it on whatever level. That it is impossible to understand the reasons that the alcoholic reaches for each and every drink." Okay. Some people think they just become obsessive with things and alcohol just happens to be the object of their obsession. But if this is the case, then why aren't there a similar number of people obsessed with drinking water or drinking juice or whatever? Okay, this is the main view that society needs to change, says William. The main fact that it must accept, if it is ever to start to win the war against alcoholism, that any person who drinks too much or drinks irresponsibly over a period of time will end up an alcoholic. No one is safe. And one of my views on that, well, the first thing is when I read that, as I'm reading Alcohol Explained, I feel good because I know that William is not siding with the viewpoint that alcoholism is a biological issue, like a genetic issue. So, as you know, at the Truth About Alcohol and Strive movement, we don't focus too much on the biological or the genetic argument that alcoholism is something that we inherit. We prefer to believe and focus on that alcoholism is an invisible, violent and dominant belief system. And I didn't have a conversation with William as to whether he believes that or not. And reading the book, he doesn't really go into too much depth about it being a belief system as such. But it is really refreshing if you are put off from the genetic side of things, that William's not really into that. Okay, really important. And you know, he makes a good point about why don't we have people out there obsessed with drinking water or obsessed with drinking juice. I think that is a really good point. I know it's been a long time since I gave up drinking alcohol, but just recently when I started to drink coffee for the first time, I realized that I was walking down the street and I couldn't stop thinking and fantasizing about drinking coffee. I never fantasized about drinking a smoothie or fantasized about drinking juice or fantasized about drinking water. And that then means not that I have a genetic defect associated with coffee. It means that coffee, the stimulants that coffee is putting into my body, is doing something to me biologically. It's having that interaction with me. It's making me want to drink more of the stuff. Okay, so I like his viewpoint on alcoholism. You know, he says straight away, there is a rational argument why people get into a state when they drink alcohol. And I particularly like his viewpoint where he says any person who drinks too much or drinks irresponsibly over a period of time will end up an alcoholic. We don't use the term alcoholic at the Truth About Alcohol Strive. We believe that the term alcoholic is used in order to fuel alcoholism as an invisible, violent, dominant belief system. As I've repeatedly said, as long as we have an alcoholic, as long as we have the archetype of the alcoholic, then it enables us a free pass to drink as much as we like, as long as we don't end up like that person or that stereotype. So for me, I don't like it. But there is a module that we work on in the Truth About Alcohol Intensive called the Alcohol Spectrum, where we talk about our views that everybody who drinks alcohol exists on a spectrum. And at one end of the spectrum, you have someone who doesn't drink alcohol, like myself. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have someone who is absolutely caning it down them. And if they were to stop drinking alcohol, they could die, right? Because they're drinking too much of it. And everybody exists on that spectrum. And the spectrum is not even like that. It's like this, with me at the top here, not being a drinker, and someone who conforms to the stereotype of the alcoholic down the bottom. And the further you go towards that, the more you drink, the further you slide down that. A little bit like Alan Carr's pitcher plant metaphor, which actually Alan Carr's pitcher plant metaphor is much better metaphor than my alcoholic spectrum, but I'm not going to pinch that off him. I've already pinched far too much from the dear man. All right, so yeah, I wanted to make that point that anybody who drinks too much alcohol or irresponsibly drinks too much alcohol is going to end up in the same state, irrespective of genes. All right, that's really important. Okay, William on the physiological effects of drinking. So William says, when someone is depressed as a result of drinking, they are not depressed because of an actual reason. They're depressed because of the direct chemical reaction to the previous drinking. However, this depression causes them to dwell on anything and everything they can in their life that is negative. Okay, what William is referring to there is that alcohol is a depressant. So when we drink it, we are at some point throughout that experience going to end up feeling depressed. And as a result of feeling depressed, we're going to want to take more drinks or drink more alcohol to fight away that depression because it's an anesthetic as well. All right, it's kind of like always continually. People think like we're continually chasing the buzz. I like to think of it, we're continually trying to remove the depression by drinking an alcoholic or drinking a substance that actually increases depression. It's absolutely balmy. When you read his book and you understand his thought points on the physiological side of drinking, you realize that actually drinking alcohol is lunacy for the reasons we feel that we're drinking it. So many people believe that the reason we stop drinking is because the reason we drink is because our life is such a fucked up mess and we're depressed and we're anxious and we're stressed, we can't deal with life, so we drink alcohol to cure our depression, when actually it makes us more depressed, you know. And what he's saying here is he's really highlighting that although you're saying to yourself, I'm depressed because everything in my life is a mess, actually we're bypassing a real huge problem and a real significant contributor to depression, and that is alcohol itself. And it's not until you stop drinking alcohol that you are able to actually understand this and feel it, because you have to feel it. And then once you're living life without alcohol, then you can start to like fix the areas of your life that aren't so great without drinking this alcohol, this substance that is going to make you depressed. Think about it. You're trying to fight, let's say you're a little bit depressed because your relationship isn't going well. Okay, now imagine trying to fix your relationship when you're someone who doesn't drink alcohol. Like you compost mentis, you're fucking with it, you're reflecting, you're able to not defend as much, you know, you're willing to communicate. Now imagine trying to deal with that situation as a drinker when the byproduct of drinking is to make you more depressed. So you want to like try to fix your relationship, but drinking alcohol is making you feel more depressed, which is going to make you feel more depressed, not just generally, but more depressed about your relationship. So why would you want to fix it? So I thought that was interesting to mention. William on the subconscious, he says, in fact, the vast majority of information that is passed to the subconscious mind is simply disregarded. It is only when the same or similar data is received time and again with the same or similar results that it starts to register on the subconscious, and over time it will become a large and influential part of your subconscious reasoning. Okay, in the Truth About Alcohol Taster, we talk about the work of our three brains. Okay, we talk about the neocortex, which controls all our five senses and brings in information from the world around us, and then that part of your brain communicates to the limbic brain, which is your emotional side of your brain, to to provide you with the correct neurochemical concoctions of dopamine, serotonin, cortisol, GABA, whatever neurotransmitters. It fits whatever information your neocortex is brought in, and then your cerebellum seals the deal. It merges the work that your neocortex has done with your limbic brain, and it creates what's called either a declarative or a non-declarative memory. I'm not going to go into that too deep here, but basically what it's saying is, if you go into a pub for the first time and you feel all this wonderful anticipation and excitement and all this, and you look around and you smell women's perfume or men's aftershave, and you hear the jukebox and you hear the sounds of laughter, then that is going to be sealed as a memory, so that every time you go into a pub, your subconscious brain is telling you, hey, this is what we do when we go into a pub. We have fun, we enjoy ourselves, and part of that experience is drinking alcohol. Okay, so that confuses us into thinking that it's actual alcohol that is, creating all these stimulants and making us feel fantastic. It's not. It's everything else around the alcohol. But your subconscious, because you've gone to the pub repeatedly over time, it's made it so you don't have to keep questioning what I have to do when I go into a pub. It's like you don't have to question what to do when you go into a car. Yeah, because your subconscious knows what you're supposed to do because you've done it so many times. But what William is saying, vast amounts of knowledge and information, experiences, it doesn't retain in the subconscious. It's only what we're doing on a regular basis. And if you're someone who has lost control of alcohol, then one of the things you're doing on a regular basis is drinking a lot. So all your thought processes and patterns around drinking alcohol are all going to be stored in your subconscious as a collection, I would say, of non-declarative memories, which are memories that are rote. Like, think of them as movies, short little movies, that every time a certain trigger presents itself in an environmental trigger, such as walking into a pub, or an emotional trigger, such as arguing with your husband or your wife, then your cerebellum will automatically play this movie. And part of that movie is going to be have a drink of alcohol, because that's how we've been created as a culture. What else is William saying here on the subconscious? The timing between the consuming of a substance and the effect of it is key, not only to understanding alcoholism, but to understanding addiction generally. The quicker the effect of a drug is felt after it is consumed, the quicker the subconscious will link the one with the other, and the quicker and more effectively the addiction will take hold. The effect of a drug is felt when it enters the bloodstream, so the quicker this happens after it's consumed, the more addictive it is. In order of speed from quickest to slowest, the methods of consuming a drug are, and he says the quickest method of getting a buzz from your drug is injection, then smoking, then snorting, and then swallowing. Well, swallowing's the last. And of course, when we drink alcohol, we swallow it. I mean, hands up if you've snorted tequila. I have. But in general, you're swallowing it, right? And he says it's for this reason it takes so long to become addicted to alcohol, and why the subconscious process plays such a vital role. Because it's an addiction that grows great strength over time. Because it's taken that long for the actual addictive process to kick in, because of the way that we are consuming it. Okay, it's also really important, and we were talking about this during the podcast that I do with William, is this thought and this feeling and this belief, this perception that we have this instant buzz, and that is not true. Okay, that's our mind playing tricks on us. I've said in the interview with William, I've never taken heroin, but I've watched enough TV programs to know that as soon as that drug hits the bloodstream, I can see that something is physically happening. The person just goes, inject, whoosh, they're gone. But it's not like that with alcohol, is it? This is the thought, because we're swallowing it. So by the time we've drunk the alcohol, the time between us drinking it and the fact that it's going to give us a buzz, yeah, because of the way we're consuming it, it's not going to give us the instant buzz we think it is. And me and William talk about this in the podcast. It depends on a variety of different factors, how empty your stomach is, whether you've been taking exercise, etc., etc. But whichever way you look at it, this archetypal story that we've created, that sounds a little bit something like this. oh, one of the things I love about alcohol is that warm, that searing rawness and the heat that goes down my throat, and then the instant buzz and rush I get when the wine hits my stomach. You know, that story is I've heard it so many times by so many different people in so many different countries, and I honestly believe it's a subconscious narrative that we've picked up subconsciously through watching telly, reading magazines, listening to other people talk about alcohol. How often do we just start talking like our parents used to for no reason at all? We don't know why. Like, we'll say sayings, or we'll say certain things that I'll say certain things that my dad used to say. I notice my son Jude, he'll say things and I'll think, fucking hell, I've said that. And I'll say to him, I've said that, and he won't believe me. And it's because he's subconsciously, because he spends time with me, and I'm his dad, and he looks up to me, he's subconsciously thinking, if I'm going to be a father or a good man, I've got to behave like my dad. That's what his subconscious is saying. So he starts to repeat some of the things I'm saying. And I actually believe that some of these excuses that our resistance rolls out in order for us to chase away the cognitive dissonance, so we can drink a powerful poison that kills 3.3 million people a year and be happy with it. A lot of those stories we've inherited subconsciously, and we picked them up elsewhere. There is no truth in them, but we believe that they're true because we've believed them for so long, but we've never really put any real focus on it. Now, talking to William and understanding this, knowing that the buzz that you get is not instant whatsoever, you can start challenging your thoughts around the buzz, right? And it's not a buzz, as William says. It's a slight dulling, because it anesthetizes you. You know, it's not a buzz. It's just, there's hardly anything to it, and that is really important to understand, in my opinion, if you're going to be someone who doesn't drink alcohol. On craving. Every time you want something you can't have, you will be miserable, particularly if you see other people enjoying what you can't have. I highlighted that, and I'll say it again. Every time you want something you can't have, you'll be miserable, particularly if you see other people enjoying what you can't have. The reason I think that is really important is if you want to be someone who doesn't drink alcohol without craving, okay, the reason that we make the bold claim that we can help people do that at the Truth About Alcohol is because we don't want people to be miserable. We want people to be happy. So if you're happy drinking alcohol, then keep drinking alcohol if that's what you want to do. Don't stop drinking alcohol if it's going to make you really miserable, right? Like, and this is where pride is really important. Like, there are so many people who come to Strive who want to be people who don't drink alcohol, but they're so terrified of who they will become, or how they will behave, or who will lead them, or whatever it is. They structure their future life as a real negative swing. So it's all about status. So Seth Godin says we do things to either increase our status or maintain the status quo. We never want to do something that decreases our status. Now, if you think about alcohol is going to make, being someone who doesn't drink alcohol is going to make you miserable, then what you're doing is you're envisaging a future where your status decreases, and the resistance will pipe up and convince you, your subconscious, that is not something you want to do, quite rightly, because you don't want to be miserable. So it will keep telling you, if you keep drinking alcohol, you're going to be miserable, blah 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 blah, and you will get the right neurochemical association that is going to come with that is going to steer you away from the goal of being someone who doesn't drink alcohol. Your brain doesn't know the difference between thinking and projecting about what your future you will be and you actually being your future you, right? If you can nail down particularly your meditative process, but you don't even have to do that, because we know that if you think really negatively and shitly, it does affect everything about you physiologically, right? So, you know, when William says about, you know, you'll be miserable, pay attention to that. Don't be miserable, right? Don't be miserable. Realize as well that being miserable is a compound effect, particularly when you stop drinking alcohol. So you need to get ahead of that and work with people like the Strive group, take the taste or the intensive, so you can get ahead of that and envision this new wonderful life of being someone who doesn't drink alcohol. What else he said here? When we try to stop drinking, the spiral of craving starts and the drink relieves this, along with any minor feelings of anxiety. Many people believe that the drinker who tries to stop and cannot is already fully addicted to alcohol. The attempt and subsequent failure to stop is simply evidence of this. In fact, the process of attempting to stop actually takes the already existing addiction to a new level. It is when we try to stop that the spiral of craving starts, and from then on, the lesson being absorbed by the subconscious is not that alcohol provides a neat remedy to anxiety and depression, but if we want a drink and cannot have one, we literally cannot function as a human being. And that goes back to what I was just talking about, isn't it? Is this the reason that people cannot be people who don't drink alcohol is because they feel like it's going to be a really horrible way of living. Like their social life will not exist if they can't drink alcohol. They will lose all their friends if they can't drink alcohol, you know? And that way of thinking is actually going to start creating these feelings of anxiety and depression. So you need to be aware of this when you make a decision to stop drinking alcohol. If you do it alone, so a lot of you will be listening to this trying to stop drinking alcohol alone. If you do it alone, you're more likely to start drinking again than if you try to take this on, doing it with someone with like Strive, or taking some of the experiences we have at Truth About Alcohol, because we have peer group learning and very experienced moderators and myself working in those forums, right? So we can help you prepare for this. Prepare for the fact that when you stop drinking, you're going to get a little bit of a lull. You're going to start thinking your status is going to drop, etc. Okay. William goes on to say, however, the very good news is that craving takes place entirely in the conscious mind, and therefore we face a conscious decision whether to crave or not. And that's what I love about William's approach, and love about how we tackle things at the Truth About Alcohol, is once you understand that the craving is entirely in the conscious mind, and you understand how craving works, and for me, a craving when it comes to alcohol goes all the way back to you believing that alcohol provides you with value. If you believe that alcohol provides you with value, then that produces a desire, which then produces a craving, which then turns into a fantasy. And once you start fantasizing about alcohol, you're fucked unless you know a way of getting around that. And listen to William's podcast tomorrow, and he talks about that a little bit. But it's really good that we have control over our craving. And of course we have control over our craving, because I used to be someone who doesn't drink alcohol. I used to crave alcohol. Now I don't. I didn't take a pill for that. Nobody removed any of my genes or modified them. I just made the decision to change, right? So that's really important to know. The other very important point to note, says William, is that when alcohol starts to become a problem and the drinker tries to stop and fails, the failure is due to their wanting to avoid the spiral of craving. They are not at this stage drinking for the supposed benefits of drinking, but rather they are drinking to avoid the misery of craving. So he's saying is, once you stop drinking alcohol, now all of a sudden you're missing alcohol again because you're now craving it because you feel miserable. Now you really need to realize that the only reason you're drinking alcohol is because alcohol is, the lack of it is making you feel so shit. The lack of it is making you go down this spiral of descent. And the only way out of it is not drinking more alcohol, because you just get set back in the system. It's stopping drinking alcohol, and then over the long term, dealing and feeling with the physical and psychological uncomfortableness around stopping drinking. And unless you're somebody who your medical officer or your doctor will tell you that you're at risk if you stop drinking alcohol, which is not going to be anybody on Strive, because we won't deal with people at that level. We'll send them somewhere to get professional help. Your inability to manage your physical withdrawal for alcohol, there is no inability. What we're going to feel and experience is going to be really, really minor. Really, really minor. And I actually believe the more you think it's going to be major, the likelier you are to make it feel more uncomfortable. I drank a very, very high level of alcohol for 3 decades, and I stopped on the spot when I said I was, and I had no withdrawal whatsoever. The people I've spoken to on Strive who have withdrawal, I can't sleep very well for a couple of nights. I get a bit shaky. I wake up and have the sweats, right? It's very minimal, and William's book goes through this and talks a lot about how the withdrawal symptoms are really minor compared to what we are capable of enduring as human beings. Once again, I want to make a caveat here. I'm not talking about people who have been drinking that much that their body is dependent on it for their survival, or people who would suffer from the DTs, the delirium tremens. This is different cases. I'm not talking about those. And in all instances, people have to seek medical help outside of me giving you advice. Yeah. On the relaxing effects of alcohol, William has this to say: alcohol is a depressant and an anesthetic. It anesthetizes certain feelings such as tiredness, stress, pain, discomfort, and the effect of this is that we tend to feel more mentally relaxed after a drink. This is where people argue with me about value. So they'll say, well, of course it gives me short-term value because it's an anesthetic. They don't say that. They say, I'm feeling stressed, I have a drink and I feel a little bit better. Okay. Now, what William is saying is the reason you're feeling a little bit better is because alcohol is an anesthetic. It's actually removing the pain or removing the stress in that moment because it's an anesthetic. Okay. But then he goes on to say, it has always been assumed that the relaxing mental effect and the physical impairment of intoxication go hand in hand, and they are a part and parcel of the same process. However, this is not the case. The physical intoxication and the mental relaxation run their course at different speeds. Essentially, alcohol provides us with a feeling of relaxation. However, the brain and nervous system reacts to this by releasing stimulants and becoming more sensitive, with the result that when the alcohol wears off, we are more anxious and unrelaxed than when we were before we took the drink. So we're inclined to take another drink, and the relaxing effect of every drink we take registers on the subconscious, but the corresponding feeling of anxiety does not register on the subconscious as being the result of the alcohol, as it is too far apart from the time for the subconscious to link the one with the other. So over time, the subconscious mind comes to believe that alcohol will relieve anxiety, so that whenever we suffer anxiety or stress in our lives, we encounter a subconscious trigger or to take a drink. This in turn can set off the spiral of craving, which means we simply cannot function or enjoy ourselves without a drink. Addiction takes hold in the subconscious. Because alcohol is drunk rather than, for example, being injected or snorted, there is a significant time lapse between the drinking of the drink and the relaxing effect. It can take some time, therefore, for the subconscious to link the two together. Okay, so what he's saying here is we believe that the drinking alcohol is going to be the cure for our stress and anxiety, and in the short term it is because it's an anesthetic. But then once that wears off, your body is now feeling stressed and anxious as a result of the fact that your alcohol is now worn off. So now you want to kind of keep chasing that relaxing effect, but you have to keep drinking in order to do that. And he's saying that there is a disparity between physical impairment and the intoxication as in terms of how the subconscious works. So the subconscious brain isn't really understanding what's going on. So it gets confused and starts to think that it's actually alcohol that is relaxing you, and it's forgetting the fact that alcohol is actually causing the anxiety that therefore you're chasing the relaxation for. Okay, so the subconscious is not linking the fact that the alcohol is causing the anxiety and your stress. Okay, and this is why we continually believe, and it helps with the cognitive dissonance, that by drinking alcohol, it's going to relax us. But on the question of value, it doesn't relax us long term. It creates the anxiety and the stress that we then end up seeking solace or relaxation in alcohol. It's like oscillation, as Robert Fritz says. It's like you're stuck in this perpetual cycle of stress, anxiety, relaxation, stress, anxiety, relaxation, and the relaxation. And the only way out of that is understanding that long-term alcohol doesn't provide you with the holy grail of the relaxing benefits you need. The only way to get those benefits is to learn to experience the mild suffering that you will get when you're feeling stressed and anxious. Learn different coping tools and mechanisms outside alcohol, so you never need alcohol in order for you to deal with stress and anxiety. So for me, for example, how do I deal with my stress and anxiety? I don't even think about it subconsciously anymore. My brain just manages it. I just manage it. You know, I don't have alcohol anymore. I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore, so my brain has to deal with it. How does it deal with it? I take it. I fight with my wife. I feel really, really bad, and I feel really, really bad, and I just have to feel bad. Whereas in the past, I might have a drink, okay? But that drink doesn't solve anything, because at some point, I'm still going to return to feeling really bad about arguing with my wife. But now I'm doubly feeling bad because I have the anxiety and the stress that has now been released into my brain via the stimulants that alcohol provides, because alcohol is also making me feeling stressed, right? So I've got a double whammy of stress. So super important to remember that. On alcohol and on sleep, William says in a natural cycle of sleep, you'll have 6 or 7 cycles of REM sleep. However, when you drink, you will typically only have 2. And this is a really interesting one. And please listen to the episode with Ruben Nyman on sleep. So many people, they start the process of becoming someone who doesn't drink alcohol, and then they freak out because they're having a few uncomfortable nights of sleep. And they think, wow, I need to drink alcohol to knock myself out. I need to drink alcohol to sleep. When really and truthfully, you're not getting... Sleep is it's not about how long you're unconscious for in the night. It's the quality of the sleep that you get in. And if you're drinking alcohol, and you're knocking yourself out, you're not getting that quality of sleep. You're not getting it, okay? William points that out and talks about that in his book, and I think that's really super important. But you wouldn't believe how many people go back to drinking alcohol because they can't sleep. And the only reason they can't sleep in the interim is because the irritability factor of not having alcohol to be the answer of all the problems. So they have to figure out their anxiety. They have to figure out their stress. Like, for example, back in the day when I worked on the railway, I hated the railway. So I would go to bed at night really stressed and anxious that I had to wake up in the morning and go to work on the railway. Now, that would keep me up all night. Now, if I had a drink, I might be able to knock myself out. But my quality of sleep is not going to be any good, is it? What's the answer? Well, the answer is to either find a way to enjoy my job or leave my job. It's not to drink alcohol to deal with my job, is it? You know? On taste, William says many people believe they like the taste of alcohol. They may like the taste of alcoholic drinks, but they do not like the taste of alcohol. Any food or drink contaminated with the amount of acetaldehyde, I can't even say it. Acetaldehyde. acetaldehyde that a unit of alcohol produces would be banned as having an unacceptable health risk. In the same way, if you put a small amount of dog piss in a glass of orange juice, it would be palatable, providing the amount of urine was small enough that the pleasant taste of the orange masticated adequately. And if you think that's bullshit, it's not. I'm not proud of this, right? But I have been in a pub in the beginning of the night where my friend is giving me half of his pint. He's gone to the toilet and I've pissed in his pint and I've given it to him and I've watched him drink it without even realising it's piss in it. And then we've all laughed and we've told him, and only then does he feel physically sick, right? Those are the things that we used to do when we were drinking back in my day. You never knew what was going to end up in your pint. Somebody's false teeth once ended up in my pint. That did make me sick. So the point William's making here is, we say we like the taste of alcohol, but we don't like the taste of alcohol. We like everything else that makes the alcohol palatable. If you think about wine, for example, we say, yeah, we really like wine. No, we like the grapes, we like the fruit, we like everything else that's in it, but we don't like the alcohol. Because if we separate the alcohol from all the other shit that we put in it to make it palatable, you wouldn't drink alcohol on its own because it would kill you. Okay? So we're not drinking it for the taste. So anyone that says, I like the drink of alcohol, no, you might like the drink of wine. You might like the combined drink of wine, but you're not drinking it because you like the taste of alcohol. You're drinking it because you like the concoction as an entirety. If that was the case, you could simply drink non-alcoholic wines and non-alcoholic beers, and you would be none the wiser. And for those of you that say no, there's a difference between non-alcoholic wine and beers, well, I'm pretty sure if we substituted your drink one night and didn't tell you, you wouldn't notice. You wouldn't notice. I remember a friend of mine, Neil Farm, always used to drink lager and a dash of lemonade because he couldn't stand the drink of lager like most people. We'd been around, we'd come back with 4 pints. I put him down, and I can't believe he used to carry 4 pints. Crazy, right? I put it down, and he would say, which is mine, and I'd forget, and he'd go crazy, and I would say, well, just taste it, you'll know which one's yours. And he never knew which one was his, you know. So taste, it's another illusion. On alcohol's effect on emotions, The simple fact of the matter is that people do not become angry, introspective, unhappy, regretful, or anything else when they drink because the alcohol has brought out the true side of them, but because the alcohol has prevented their brain from acting as it should do. It changes them into something they aren't by stopping their brain from working the way it normally does. Essentially, it causes people to be overly emotional because it causes them to be unable to check their emotions. Alcohol can cause relationships to fail that ought otherwise to flourish and grow strong, causing both the drinker and their partner to miss out on what would otherwise be a loving, supportive and successful relationship. This actually makes perfect sense if you think about it. If you think that alcohol relieves anger, misery, frustration, then alcoholics, who drink the most, would surely be the happiest people on the planet. Drunks would be the most calm and happy people and those least likely to get into a fight. The fact is that whoever you are as a drinker is not the real you. It is a poor quality you, a tired, irritable, overly emotional you, essentially not a very pleasant you. I think that's brilliant, right? We really are Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to drinking. I used to get really, really angry at my ex-wife, but that would soon turn into empathy when I realised, whenever I used to think about leaving her or stuff like this, I always came back to the same thing. That I knew that I wasn't dealing with her. Like, people say, oh yeah, the truth comes out. No. My mum, when she's had a shed full, gets really aggressive, right? Very, very quickly. If you engage her in debate or something, she gets really aggressive, particularly with my dad. Like, she'll give my dad a fucking mouthful. She'll overpower him when she's had a drink. But when she's sober, she doesn't say boo to a goose to him. She won't really stand up to him when she's not had a drink. And this is because her inhibitions are doing their job. Her inhibitions are designed for us to not overstep the mark, right? We need these inhibitions because, let's face it, we have sometimes the most horrific the urges to do the most horrific things. Because we're animals. We're creatures who want to do horrific things sometimes. And we need to keep that in check. And this is why we have rules. This is why we have inhibitions. This is why we have morals and ethics. We can't go around having sex with every single person we want to have sex with. We can't go around with killing people who get on our nerves or flattening them or being overly aggressive. We have to keep these emotions in check. And it's no surprise that whenever you look at murder statistics, rape statistics, violent or personal injury statistics, alcohol is always there because it removes those inhibitions, and we don't have that filter, that ability to I was going to say correctly behave like a human being. I mean, it's part of the human condition that we are very aggressive creatures. We can be very aggressive creatures, right? But we need these things to keep us in check. And drinking alcohol just removes that layer. So when people say to me, yeah, I drink alcohol because it removes my inhibitions, yes, it does. But is that a good thing? I don't think it is. On drinking at social occasions, people who find conversations with strangers awkward find them equally awkward when they've been drinking, says William. They can even be more awkward when you've been drinking as you're desperately trying not to appear intoxicated. I like that one. So people are saying, I have to drink alcohol because when I'm out, I feel really stressed and anxious and I don't like talking and stuff. But he's right. If those people are worried about that, they're also going to be worried in their minds thinking, oh my God, I hope this person doesn't think I'm a dick because I've had a drink. I hope I don't say this and that because I've had a drink. I hope I don't behave stupidly because I've had a drink. Conversely, even when sober, conversations do become more enjoyable and or easier after initial awkward period. Bang on. I don't drink anymore, but the initial period of a conversation with anyone is always going to be awkward. It's only until you talk to somebody about something you're interested in that you can start to grow the confidence and engage more deeply in that subject. You know, when we're at social occasions and when we're a drinker, very often we're accepting very surface level conversations because we never get deep enough to talk about them, because by the time we get there, we've had too much to drink and we can't remember what we've even been talking about, or the conversation has just completely gone off the rails, right? The other thing that he says that's really important, instead of coming across shy and a bit awkward, you just come across as drunk. And he says, firstly, if you regularly drink at social occasions, alcohol gets the credit for this happy feeling that you would have gotten anyway. This is not effect of the alcohol. It is separate and naturally occurring. This is why we feel very different going out and drinking with our friends compared to sitting home alone drinking. I picked this up off Melanie Joy in the book Beyond Beliefs. It's a difference between content and process. So imagine, for example, you go out for the night with your mates. The process of going out for the night with your mates is the anticipatory build-up of seeing mates you haven't seen for a long time, getting dressed up, looking in the mirror, feeling good, nice, excitement about meeting someone of the opposite sex, going out and enjoying the banter and the camaraderie and the fun and the jokes and the laughter. Maybe watching football while you're out, playing poker, playing a bit of pool, doing some gambling, whatever you're doing amongst yourselves as a mate, chatting up some woman or chatting up some man, listening to music on the jukebox. That is all the process. The content is drinking alcohol. And you need to learn to separate the two when you're worried that you cannot attend social functions without alcohol, okay? Because all the enjoyment you get from a social occasion is all part of the process. It's nothing to do with the content, which is drinking alcohol. In fact, the content, drinking alcohol, actually decreases the enjoyment of the process. So everything that I just mentioned there, the anticipatory build-up, meeting your friends, having a laugh, watching telly, playing pool, all that stuff. When you drink alcohol, all those experiences deteriorate to some degree or another. So, learning to separate content from process is really, really important. The fact of how our brains work in terms of creating these non-declarative memories, or as William points out in the first part, how our subconscious minds create the thinking around alcohol, incorrectly attaches too much importance to alcohol. Because our limbic brain has created such a wonderful, powerful neurochemical rush of emotions around the first few times we go into a bar, because it's done that, it incorrectly assumes that alcohol is a very, very integral part of the creation of those neurochemicals. It's not. You could be drinking anything at that moment. You could be having a pen in your hand and thinking it's the pen. The alcohol just decreases the likelihood that you're going to enjoy yourself at social occasions, not increases it. All right, I'm going on a bit more. I've got a few more here. On the concept of refusing to only have one drink, William says, now let us assume you are out and drinking for a few hours. How many drinks do you think will be taken because you have a genuine choice and decide you want another? And how many do you think are being taken because that unpleasant, anxious feeling is building up and your unconscious mind is starting to tell you that you need another drink and another to get rid of that unpleasant feeling? These are the people who say, oh, if I can only have one, then what's the bother? You know, the ones where you'll see, why don't you have 2 pints? You know, they're driving a car. Why don't you have 2 pints? You know, you've got the car. Why don't you have 2 pints? You're not over the limit. And they'll say, oh, no. If I'm only having 2 pints, what's the point? You know, I might as well have none. What William's saying is we don't realise that subconsciously, after the first 1 or 2 drinks, the reason that we're now drinking is because we need to keep drinking in order to get rid of that unpleasant, anxious feeling that drinking is creating within us. Okay, I think personally that it's more nuanced than that, and very, very related to habits. So let's say the times when I used to go out with my mates and we'd go in rounds. So let's say there was 6 of us, then the plan would probably to have 2 rounds, right, of 6 pints each, so 12 pints. Now, I wouldn't say in that instance that I'm drinking to chase away that unpleasant feeling. I'm drinking because that's what people like me do. Going back to Seth Godin's classic saying, people like this do things like that, or people like that do things like this. People like Lee Davy and Ogmore Vale, they drink in rounds when they go out, and if they go in a round, if there's 6 of them, they're going to have 1 or 2 rounds, and they're going to drink 6 or 12 pints. Nothing neurochemically or biologically or psychologically is going to change that. That is what's going to happen, because that's what you do every time you go out, even if you feel shit, whatever. Okay, so I like what William's saying here about chasing away that unpleasant, anxious feeling, but I also want to draw attention to the fact that just pure straight habit also links in here. William, on the mental agony of stopping, the idea of being miserable your whole life is enough to make anybody miserable. Right, so if you're really miserable and you're cynical and you're pessimistic and you think everything in the world is is just a fucking nightmare. And you look at the world and you think about Donald Trump and artificial intelligence and biotech and climate change and murder and terrorism and all this kind of stuff. Pretty much likely you're gonna be drinking again, because you're just looking for any excuse not to be miserable. But if you're super duper happy about everything, then you're less likely, I think, to want to be caning it down you. Or you'll certainly be able to get out of that cycle of despair, and by despair, that cycle of addiction, if you're happier than if you're not. He says, if you believe that you're going to spend the rest of your life unhappy, that belief alone will guarantee you'll be miserable, because the prospect of having a life of misery is a horrible one, enough to make anybody miserable. The most recurrent of these excuses for most people is that a drink will make us happy, or happier or less miserable, depending on where you are emotionally at this time. We force this view on ourselves again and again and again, so that when we come to stop, we believe we won't be able to enjoy life or certain situations as much without a drink. So what he's saying is, we actually create our own mental agony of stopping. The reason we can't stop is our own faults. We've created it by continually telling ourselves that alcohol is the cure for us being miserable, when alcohol actually is one of the reasons we're miserable. And finally, the last note that I've made here is the better way of stopping. The best way to stop drinking is not to never think about alcohol, which is impossible. The more you try to not think about alcohol, you'll always think about alcohol. Nor is it to be constantly resisting the desire for a drink. The best way to remove the desire. And we're running an intensive at the moment. There are people on the intensive. I think it was John or Craig. One of them jokingly said the other day, I just wish that people would stop talking to me about my decision to stop drinking alcohol. Well, part of the problem is when you stop drinking alcohol and you take the intensive or you join Strive or the taste, is you continually are thinking about alcohol. It's a byproduct of it. But that's a good thing, because we have forged these neurological connections, these subconscious connections, and these non-declarative memories that are forcing us to drink alcohol. And the way to get rid of them is neuroplasticity. It is to change those neurological connections by thinking differently about alcohol. And the way you do that, like William is saying here, and we say it true about alcohol, is to remove the desire. Is to understand and accept that alcohol provides you with no long-term value. And if you can understand and accept with a conviction that alcohol provides you with no long-term value, then without a value associated with drinking, there's no desire, there's no craving, there's no fantasy. Think about it. I don't believe alcohol provides me with any value. So why would I ever fantasize about drinking alcohol? I believe sex provides me with value, so I fantasize about having sex. At the moment, I'm watching Making a Murderer, Netflix. I believe that Making a Murderer provides me with value, so I fantasize about watching it. During the day, I'll be thinking to myself, I can't wait until tonight when Zia goes to bed and me and Eliza can watch Making a Murderer. If you say to yourself, oh my God, I can't wait till I get home after work to have a drink because I just feeling so fucking stressed out and I know that alcohol is going to just fucking chill me out, I can't wait to open that bottle of wine. You're fantasizing about it. That is part of the craving. That is the craving, all right? And that's going to fuck you up. So the best way of stopping is to remove that fantasy. And to do that, you need to remove the desire, to remove the craving. You have to go right back to the root cause. And the root cause is alcoholism. Is an invisible, violent, and dominant belief system. And that belief system has convinced your subconscious that drinking alcohol is fucking brilliant. Okay? That is the root cause. You need to understand that alcoholism is the root cause. Understand the truth about alcohol. Raise awareness of that truth. And then learn to exist as someone who doesn't drink alcohol in a world of people who drink alcohol. And that's what we teach you at the Truth About Alcohol. Okay? If you go to www.alcoholexplained.com, if I've got that address wrong, just Google William Porter Alcohol Explained. You find his website, you will find the first 5 chapters of his book free of charge. Okay? It's a great book. It's written in very simple terms. All right? I told him it's like Lego. He's done it like building Lego. Every step is really great at breaking down your perceptions around the value of alcohol. What I like about it is it's not another Alan Carr book. So I feel that Jason Vale's book and Annie's book, they're too similar to Alan Carr's book, you know, for me anyway, to read it and get more value again. Like everybody copies something of somebody else and then puts a twist on it to make it a little bit more unique to them, and Annie and Jason have done that, but it's not enough for me to gain enough more knowledge out of it. Williams is different. You could tell that he comes from a school of thought of thinking around Alan Carr, but his book is different. There's nothing like Williams' book out there, in my opinion. And he's really encouraged me to write my own book, actually. I never wanted to write a book because I didn't want to write another Alan Carr copy. But I think after reading Williams' book that I can do that if I ever get the time. So check out William Porter's Alcohol Explained. Buy it. Don't bother with the 5 free chapters. Just buy his freaking book. Go to his website as well. Check out his talks and stuff. And tomorrow I will be releasing our conversation. And if you have any questions for William, just send me an email at truthaboutalcohol@gmail.com and I'll send them over to him. In the meantime, we have a Truth About Alcohol taster beginning on 1st of November, where we talk about a lot of these things in depth and help you become someone who doesn't drink alcohol for the month of November. Check that out, please. truthaboutalcohol@gmail.com and get involved with it. Thank you very much for listening.